Good morning and welcome to today's edition of MC News.
Today we are going to give you more insight on the Underground Railroad.
The Underground Railroad was a series of routes and paths where slaves attempted to escape their owners in order to gain freedom.
People called conductors led the slaves to safety, but sometimes they were caught.
When the slaves were caught, they were often killed or tortured, sometimes in a large crowd.
Anyone caught assisting slaves could be sentenced to many years in prison or even death.
These slaves had to endure a long and dangerous journey, but their reward was freedom.
To the northern states and be free. But after the Fugitive Slave Act was strengthened, all black people were forced to go to Canada.
But some people were willing to help these desperate slaves, sacrificing their home, food, and even freedom to help these slaves escape.
One person who led the Underground Railroad was called Harriet Tubman. She carried a shotgun and threatened anybody who tried to go back with death.
Now we go to our reporter at the scene, who is reporting from one part of the Underground Railroad.
Here's one route that was used by slaves. This route goes to Maryland up the eastern shore of Maryland and then into Delaware. The first African slaves arrived in America in Virginia in 1619. Rich white men wanted profit, so they bought poor black men and women for virtually nothing. Although the slaves helped the Americans in the war against the British for the freedom of the Americans, they still did not gain their own freedom. Slaves had to follow all of the commands of their masters, and the more skilled the slave was, the more profitable he was. The slaves would work long hours and were often beat for their mistakes. In 1850, a trained slave was worth up to $2,500, and this is why they were chased by the master of bounty hunters, as this was more than 10 times the average person's annual earnings. Harriet Tubman was born into slavery, and she later escaped, which is how she got into life of helping others. Her name was Araminta Ross, and then she later changed it to Harriet Tubman in order to escape slave hunters. Harriet Tubman will now give us more information about the routes that she used to lead the slaves to freedom.
I helped slaves escape through what was called the Underground Railroad. If any one of my slaves wanted to go back, I would threaten them with my shotgun. That's how I lost none of my 300 escapees. We went out of Maryland when they went foot up the eastern shore of Maryland and into Delaware. There were several stations or safe houses in the vicinity of Willingham, Delaware. From there, the group traveled to Philadelphia or southern eastern Pennsylvania. Many then traveled further north and some settled in Massachusetts or New York. However, many traveled to Canada.
What motivated you to escape slavery and help others escape slavery?
Well, I myself was worried that I might be sold to another master that would treat me worse, so I decided to escape. I used the routes of the Underground Railroad, which was a series of houses. I didn't want others to suffer. Well, I suffered as a slave, so I decided to help them escape by conducting the Underground Railroad.
So what troubles have you run into?
There were many slave hunters attempting to capture slaves and return them to southern states, especially after the Fugitive Slave Act, which was passed in 1850. This act allowed slave owners and hunters to capture people that were in places where they were legally free and bring them back into slavery. After runaways made it into their destination, a group known as vigilance committees helped them start afresh by providing some level of protection and sometimes helped them finding work and a home. In some cases, family members attempted to buy back still enslaved family members after arriving in Canada. However, this was dangerous as it could potentially give up their whereabouts.
When running away, how did you make sure that things were kept secret?
Well, we used code words. Safe houses meant stations. Detroit was midnight. Detroit Lake was Jordan. End of journey was dawn. Drinking gourd was the Big Dipper and North Star. The Jordan River was the Ohio River. The Promised Land was Canada. And people who helped move slaves from place to place were conductors. Some of these code words were railroad words. For example, when a slave said that they were going from midnight to dawn, they actually meant that they were going from Detroit to the end of their journey.
Thank you for your great time and great work. Now back to Amanish.
Thank you, Neha, for that great interview.
Now we bring you the update on the Underground Railroad.
The railroad began operating in the 1780s, but was not known as the Underground Railroad until the 1830s.
These escapes could take up to a year, and many slaves had slave hunters tracking them down at a high price over their heads.
Exact number is not known, but it is suspected that almost 30,000 slaves were freed using the railroad, and there were many paths used by slaves that were trying to escape.
Railroad traffic was highest during the period of 1840 to 1860, mostly after the Fugitive Slave Act was enhanced in 1850.
This act allowed slave hunters to capture enslaved people in places in which they were legally free.
There were many attempts to capture people from Canada in order to return them to the southern states.
Slave hunters were allowed to take any black, whether it was a slave they wanted or not. The Underground Railroad had many leaders that helped slaves escape. One of them was William Still.
Today we have Mr. William Still here, and he has agreed to participate in an interview.
Mr. Still, what was your early life like?
Well, my family was born to slavery. My mother was a slave in Maryland, and my father bought his freedom in 1798. In Maryland, we were slaves, but in New Jersey, we were free.
How did you help slaves?
Well, I interviewed slaves, kept records of their personal biography, their destination, and any aliases, so that I could bring back families separated by slavery and also help them reach their freedom.
Why did you keep the records?
I had the records with precaution because I knew the accounts would be important in helping the future reunion of family members who got separated under slavery. I also helped my own brother Peter, whom I had previously never met as a boy.
Thank you for the interview. Now back to you, Hawanish.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Tune in next week for the next edition of MC News.